What's the current approach to disabled access in woodlands? John, Daren.
Well, I don't know, let's check whether this is working. Well, I suppose it needs to improve is the opening starting answer. I think as an organisation, we pride ourselves on the 30,000 hectares that we've got is open and free access to all, in terms of you don't need to be a member of the Woodland Trust to get into the woodland. However, I would encourage you to be a member of the Woodland Trust. But also, I think the reality is that inclusion statement still needs work because it's about actually creating the access in some very remote places as well as some places which are close to local communities that aren't the easiest to access depending on the disability that you have. So we've done some very important work supported by the likes of the Heritage Lottery Fund in a site near Grantham, which has put in the tracks that have connected the woodland that's been created by the community over the last 30 years with the town, but also putting in the surfaces, which means that it is multi-purpose so that you can access it both on foot, in a wheelchair, push chairs, bikes, etc.
John, did you want to make any point and build on that?
Yeah, I was just going to add to say that I think it won't be appropriate everywhere. I think Darren's point of accessible woodlands is the starting point. So we want to make as many of these woodlands accessible, and then it's a case of, well, accessible for whom and in what way. So you've got to be able to get there, first of all, and then you've got to be able to get around once you get there. And again, some of the terrain will lend itself to certain woodlands being more suitable for that, and the proximity, again, certain woodlands. So I think, what the commitment would be from the Midlands Forest Network is that we want to be able to see across the Midlands that we have exemplary disabled access, so that those can be case studies for others to use. We want to have the expectation that that is put in where there's a need and opportunity, and we want to be able to sort of raise that ambition across the whole piece.
Thank you. I'm not going to turn this into an open discussion, but Andrew has waved so vigorously in my general direction, he's going to make a point. Just get the mic to him.
Hi, I'm Andy Norton from Mansfield District Council. As soon as I saw this, I wanted to put my personal hat on, if that's okay, because this is something I'm very passionate about. I have a 24-year-old son with cerebral palsy, and he loves getting out. He loves going out and about to places, but the barriers we face, not just at Woodlands but elsewhere, yes, we totally get. You're not going to be able to get everywhere. Totally get that. But the times you come up to a path and there's an A-frame gate or something like that, because you don't want the quad bikes to get down there, you don't want the motorbikes to get down there, So there's that side, but then there's the access, but then there's the associated facilities. We're talking about a network. There should be the associated facilities. So some of you will know about these, but changing places, toilets, they're an important thing to a large number of the community. It's an important thing to ourselves. And if we're going to have a network of access, we need the supporting infrastructure. Appreciate it costs, but it will give the benefits to those members of the community as well. Thank you. Sorry.
That's fine. So building this in from the start, I think an absolute key part of that. Thank you for that. What's the next one? Where is the land coming from? And where's the money going to come to buy it? Do you want to have a go?
So, is it on? Is it on? Is it on now?
Is it? Yeah.
Oh, yes, perfect. So I can talk about this at a macro level. Across the whole of England, the land to achieve our targets is going to primarily come from lower grade agricultural land that's been mapped as low sensitivity for woodland, and the Forestry Commission have published some fantastic maps which help to show where those areas are, and are just about to publish a new version of that. So that can really help guide people in what are going to be good areas to plant. And I think the important thing is also to say that our experience in the Nature for Climate Fund is that you don't necessarily have to be buying the land. Actually, buying land has been a very small part of what we've done, and it'd be interesting to hear from John, because obviously the experience in the National Forest, I think, is also that generally it hasn't been about buying land. So we do need to make sure that we're funding the ongoing costs of creating woodland and managing woodland, and we will be doing that through the grants that government are providing. But there are lots of different models that we can look to use, I think.
John, do you want to pick that up, and then we'll work our way to Liz, maybe from a
I
funding
can be
perspective?
definitive and say we're definitely not going to create more land. So that is that is for sure. What we can do, though, I think, is make the right and appropriate schemes for the land we have got. And yeah, some of the experience we've had in the National Forest is to recognise that we have got better agricultural land, and that's more appropriate for wood pasture or agroforestry. We've got peri-urban and urban sites where we want to see green infrastructure rather than closed canopy. And we have got sites where there's a lot of marginal land which is unsuitable for other uses that will lend itself to woodland. So you've immediately got a patchwork of appropriate types of schemes that means we're not going to put closed canopy woodland everywhere. And I think that's the mechanisms that we want to explore here as part of this network. It's very much about bringing forward opportunities that meet the integrated land use we want to see. And, you know, I just feel at the minute we've got such pressures on land that we have to integrate our uses much, much more than we have done historically. Talking earlier about, you know, the need for buildings to also be our energy hubs with solar and other opportunities. In the same way, our land has to be able to produce food and biodiversity and access, and, you know, so we've got to be able to make this integrated piece work.
Thanks. Liz, any reflections? Money, part of your world?
Well, obviously, as you'd expect, I can't promise money at this point. But in terms of applying to us, certainly you can apply to us. Those 4 investment principles are really key. So telling us about how your projects are taking that into account and then looking to us for that. In terms of land acquisition, we can fund land acquisition projects. We do have a number of requirements around that, which you can find on the website. But as has been said, it's about also exploring other ways of doing that. So not relying on land acquisition in order to achieve these aims, I think.
Thank you. Daren, I'm going to move on to the question unless you've got anything significant you'd like to add on that one, just in terms of time. So natural regeneration of woodland is an important piece of the puzzle. How can we include people and get them engaged with naturally regenerating woodlands? Daren, should we start with you on that one?
Yep.
Thank you.
So I think I would agree with the statement. It is an incredibly important part of the puzzle for us. I think the way you get people engaged is, first and foremost, them recognising it's a natural process that may or may not be the neatest looking patch of land for a while. And people have this real sense of neatness being good. I don't think we should shy away from planting. I think it's not an either or, because actually in the right place, natural regeneration will be a cost-effective way of doing it. It will deliver a better outcome for nature. But in other places, you could wait a very long time to get what you're aiming for. And I think as I said in my points earlier, actually the power of somebody putting a spade in the ground and putting a tree in that hole, we shouldn't lose sight of as well. So there's power in both options.
Thank you. Sophie's jumped in. I love the reverse anonymity. Thank you, Sophie. How do you propose to get landowners and managers involved and engaged? So a really important cohort. We talked about communities, local and of interest, and the land-owning community part of that. Do you want to start, and then Daren can pick up?
I mean, I would say 2 things. One is that we have to be proactive, and you know, just talking about an initiative like this without actually going out and talking to landowners at an individual holding level is never going to get people on side. So some of the benefits of dedicated initiatives around the country are that they've got people able to go out at that very local level and talk to landowners and actually start from where those landowners are at. And that's really critical. The other bit of that, though, I think, is landowners who've already done it being the advocates and doing that kind of advocacy themselves with their neighbours and their peers. And again, we found some really good examples of this where some of the early adopters of tree planting in the National Forest have been our greatest advocates with some of their friends and neighbours. And there's more we can do, again, as part of a bigger network to help with that process, where we've got people who have doubts or fears or concerns or complications, that we can put that support in place with both the landowners themselves, but also some of the partners around the table.
I think the thing I would add to John's answer is, I think it's incumbent upon us, when we see the direction of travel, to articulate that to landowners to make informed decisions. And I think, if Sophie of the CLA, I don't know where you are, Sophie, but I think the CLA is a very good example of taking a longer term view. I think if you look at where something like supply chains are going, the people who are buying product off land are going to be asking for inputs around what's the climate impact of what they do, what's the nature impact of they do. We've got various acronyms that I won't bore you with, but they will drive the decisions of the people who are buying product off land. And linking back to the how do you integrate things, you don't need lots of land to deliver the sort of network that we're talking about. What you need to do is integrate trees into that land. And we know, John mentioned agroforestry. With agroforestry, you get more food off the patch of land with the trees there than if you didn't. You get more carbon captured, you get more nature, you get more resilience, you get more food security. So for the landowner, it's about how do we go out and sell the solutions and let them choose whether they want to take them or not.
I think we had a teaser on the question that popped up. Charlotte's a bit of trigger happy, perhaps. But was the next one around timber security, Charlotte? Do you want to pop that one up? Because that sort of perhaps speaks to this. I think Sir John talked about food security. We rarely talk about timber security. How do we ensure plans for the Midlands include timber? Naomi, do you want to start that one?
Yeah, I'm happy to kick off with this. I think this is really interesting because there is a lot of stuff in the media about food security, and you do see less about timber security. But it is something that, at a macro level, DEFRA ministers are really interested in and concerned about. And we've actually done a lot of work on this recently with CONFOR and members of the forestry sector organisations who published their National Wood Strategy at the end of last year. So I'm really keen that the woodlands we're creating are for a variety of purposes, including, importantly, seeing how timber is an important part of that mix. So I would love to see the Midlands Forest Network thinking about that timber angle as well, from a wider government perspective.
Should we move on to the next one then, please? Popped up. Have you any examples of what you anticipate of the investment opportunities being? We're going to be talking a bit about green finance in a little time, but any examples you want us to share at this stage?
I suppose one where there's a conversation happening at the moment is, so one of our big partners is Lloyds Banking Group. So we were out with their board before Christmas. And one of the things that they were talking to us about what they do is give a lower interest rate on loans for developers who are tackling overtly the climate crisis. And I think that's a really smart way of driving, kind of nudging good behaviour. And we're talking to them from the perspective of tree equity. How do you make sure that those developments are delivering for people and for nature, and the people who are delivering that for communities are getting a benefit for doing so. So you create the conditions for investment which are more beneficial to do the right thing than would be perhaps historically, where the benefits would have been do it as cheap as possible to maximise return as quickly as possible.
Any other reflections? You're going to take one more question to the panel. John, you want to speak to this?
I'd just add to that, I think there's a huge opportunity with social investment as well, and the kind of benefits that we can provide through this actually lend themselves to social investment. So there's the kind of more traditional investment for returns that has a place here, particularly in marketplaces like carbon. But actually, the social one is one that I really think we can play into in the Midlands.
Okay, thank you. The final question we'll deal with at this stage is how you're working with partners to facilitate affordable public transport from those disadvantaged areas nearby to forests, so creating that connection into the forests via public transport.
Wow, some good challenges coming here, aren't there?
You have definitely delivered, audience. Well done.
I mean, I think some of these things are kind of they're layers, aren't they? They're layers in what we can try and aspire to, and This wouldn't be my area of expertise, but I mean, I really think there's another layer here that we can get those partners who specialise in sustainable transport or the kind of infrastructure initiatives to come and partner with us and demonstrate what's possible. I mean, this sort of stuff is going to change massively over the next 10 years, isn't it, with all kinds of smart transport opportunities and low carbon transport opportunities. So yes, how do we get one of those partners or several of those around the table at an early stage to try and crack this stuff? Because the best will in the world, that's not my expertise, but I do think these are the sorts of things we need to bring in as partners.